Right, welcome to the Scrutiny Programme Committee. I've got apologies from Clive Lloyd, Lyndon Jones and Chris Holly. Do we have any other apologies at all? No? Okay, any disclosures of personal prejudicial interest? No, and prohibition of whip votes and declaration of party whips. Okay, let's move on to item 4 then, which is the minutes for accuracy. So I should take them through page by page. On page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, and page 7. Are we happy those are accurate? Good, okay, thank you. Item 5 is public question time. I don't believe we have any questions have been received at all. So we should go straight on to item 6, which is the report and delivery of the corporate priority of tackling poverty. I welcome Councillor Alison Pugh. I understand Councillor Louise Gibbard will be joining us, but she's being held up in another meeting. We also have Amy Hawkins, the interim head of adult services, and Anthony Richards, the tackling poverty strategy development manager. As you know, a number of committees have looked at this. We also had an inquiry headed up by Sybil back in 2017. So I think it's important that it's a very important corporate priority. So it's very important that we do look at this. Right, Alison, do you want to introduce it, or do you want to ask the officers to speak to it?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Thank you, and thank you for asking me here today and everything. You know, to introduce the report on the delivery of, as you said, a corporate priority, you know, tackling poverty. It's a well-written report. It's quite, you know, it's very detailed, but it's also quite easy to understand. I think it does spell out very well what the issues are and what our priorities are. You know, and the council has 6 key priorities, and tackling poverty is obviously one of them. You know, we define poverty as income below a minimum standard, an income standard that is acceptable to live on. Inadequate access to necessary services of good quality, and inadequate opportunities or resources to join in with social or cultural, leisure decisions. And, you know, so we all recognise that major factors of poverty, such as unemployment, an effective benefit system, high cost of housing, etc., relationships, you know, abuse, then all these are, you know, key and instrumental in playing a role there. You know, we have had key goals which we look at to improve people's lives. We have fantastic officers, and look, you know, I can't praise our officers enough in this field. I brag about people, and I tell anybody who wants to listen or who doesn't want to listen, do you know what I mean? I think we're very fortunate here. You know, the teams look holistically at people. They don't just see a current issue. They believe that, you know, you have to be in, an example would be, you have to be in the right frame of mind to look for a job or seek a job. And how can you do that if you haven't got a safe roof over your head, or enough money to you know, to put the gas on or buy food? You know, so our officers really work well together. You know, an officer would link in with the welfare rights team to help and advice. You know, the team with lifelong learning, they'll all, you know, cross over each other. The local area coordinators, there's such a fantastic team in the poverty team, of where they look out for people. And this report demonstrates that. It gives you quality in there. It gives you examples in there of how the teams have improved people's lives, you know, community cohesion, you know, another, you know, and we're a very small team, but by working with all the officers together, the community cohesion, that does spread out, and it does, you know. And this report, I'm really proud of it. I think there's a lot of work gone into it, you know, and it'll demonstrate in there as well We have internal poverty forums, we have external poverty forums. With COVID, as soon as it hit, the food was tackled, and we have a food poverty forum out there. I'm really proud of the Poverty Truth Commission that is live, going live. There's so much partnership work in that goes way and beyond internal in the council to out there supporting all our vulnerable people out there. We have work projects in the prisons. The employability team have fantastic courses on. In COVID now, people having to be made redundant, retraining, everything. These teams pull it all together. In that COVID, the domestic violence created an app, embedded in the council website for people to be able to access, and it shuts down immediately so nobody else can see that they've accessed the work. It is just above and beyond. But there are risks, and a huge amount of the work is delivered through grants. We are heavily reliant on grants, and therefore, if those grants stopped for whatever reason, as the EU was a big one, especially in the employability teams, with that funding going, how do you replace that work? Because it's not co-funded, it comes in on grants as much of the authority does. So there are risks, but if you read those case studies, you will see the excellent work these teams are doing. So, feel free to ask questions. There's lots of detail there. The officers are here, but it's a real pleasure to work with these officers.
Okay, thanks, Alison. Perhaps if I kick off with a general question in terms of the aims, if you like, of this whole agenda. It's a massive agenda.
Yeah.
Poverty is a huge problem throughout Wales and the UK, and we're just one council with very limited resources and limited powers in what we can do. So really, in terms of tackling or reducing poverty, is it not the case that what we're actually doing is trying to alleviate poverty rather than just reduce it? We're doing our best to sort of help people through particular circumstances, and we have to rely on bigger economic factors to actually start reducing it.
Definitely. We try to improve lives. We try to alleviate problems, and if you take the benefits, lots and lots of people are afraid of they don't know what they're entitled to very often, and they're also afraid to raise their heads and apply for something. Our pension credit would be a classic. People are afraid that if they apply for the pension credit, that they'll be knocked off what they're already on, so therefore they don't apply. But if somebody did apply for it, that then often opens the doors to other benefits that they then entitled to, and then you are improving lives. And it's the same for, we don't just give somebody a food parcel. There's nothing to brag about areas being really busy in food hubs. We try to look at what's gone wrong for them. How can we help? Can we get them enrolled in a course with lifelong learning? Can we, at the moment, the employability team have 26 HGV courses for people to go on with guaranteed jobs at the end of them. These are life-changing ways of working for people, and that's what these teams do. And if you look at the lifelong learning essential skills, we had a lady that went on English and maths essential skills and stuck with lifelong learning throughout. She is now a qualified nurse. The difference her family have in life, in the quality of life, is enormous. And so yeah, we can't do much about laws that come in or rules that are made and things that we have to follow. But these officers and in the community, because the partnership working is just, honestly, it's amazing out there. Everybody wants the best for people. And they tried to help.
Okay, so it's small wins towards a bigger goal then.
Yeah.
Okay. I notice Louise is with us now, so she wants to chip in at any time. Feel free. Okay. Peter Jones, do you want to ask your questions on Poverty Truth Commission and the link to wellbeing goals?
Yes, thank you, Peter. Poverty, of course, is the obverse of wealth. It's a consequence of inequality, and as Alison has said, we as a council can do little about that, but try to alleviate the worst consequences of poverty in Swansea community. I'm very interested in the establishment of a Poverty Truth Commission, which I fully support, of course, and I understand the thinking involved in its construction and what we might hope to get from it. I understand that Leeds Council, for example, has been very successful with such a commission in terms of measures they've been able to take there. And of course, I think the concept dates back to South Africa and then to the north of Ireland, where truth commissions again have operated to try to alleviate differences in the different communities. So my first question, I'll come on to the wellbeing goals afterwards, if I may, Chair. So my first question on the Poverty Truth Commission, what are we expecting to get from it? I see that it's due to be launched in 2022. What are we looking for? Thank you, Alison.
Okay, no, thanks, Peter. And look, the Poverty Truth Commission is heavily based around the Leeds model. They've been guiding and helped us to set up and learn from some of the mistakes that they had as they were developing, which is always helpful. So we've been quite true to their model, you know, because why try to reinvent the wheel if something is working? And the buy-in from the third sector and ourselves has been heartwarming. And there was money needed to be invested in the beginning to be able to get officers employed, or staff employed, and who was going to host and manage those staff, and all those. We had working parties and all that has been done. And the beauty of the Poverty Truth Commission is that it's not going to be just us or officers saying we're going to do this because this will improve your lives. We've done a lot of that over the years. We think this is what you need, this is what will help you. This will be the commissioners in the Poverty Truth Commission will be people who have really truly experienced poverty, who have really sort of beyond most people's imagination, experienced poverty, and therefore they will work alongside civic leaders like Phil Roberts, our chief exec, is one of the commissioners on there, so that they are listening to people who have really truly experienced it, and it's about them building up relationships with the people in the group. They will meet for coffee or wherever. It will be very informal. Nobody's going to be going there. The chief of police is not going to be going there in uniform or Phil in a shirt and tie. I want him in his, we want him in his jeans and jumper. We want it to be as informal and as comfortable as possible. That relationship needs to grow, like any relationship. And hopefully over time, people will open up, will speak, say what it's like. And then you draw on all that to say, this is how we improve the lives for people. So there's, like I said, from the housing associations to SCVS to us, it's not owned by any of us. We were very, very determined from the beginning that the local authority would not be having ownership of the Poverty Truth Commission, because it would have been very easy for us to, because people look to us to do it. So, but to be fair, and it's had its challenges in COVID. Of course, it's all been slowed down and everything, but now it's gathering momentum again. Amy is here and Anthony has been at the thick of the Poverty Truth Commission from the beginning. So, I'm sure he could say more than me, but that's the crux of it.
Thank you.
Okay. If any of the officers want to come in, can they just indicate by raising the virtual hand? Peter, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I'll move on. Well, thank you very much, Alison, for your response. This is an excellent example, incidentally, of what we would call co-production, isn't it? Right. Really is co-production in action, and it'd be great to see how it moves going forward. Okay.
Absolutely.
My second question or issue, if what it is, In the report on page 19, there's a reference with reference to the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, to the second of the Wellbeing Goals, the Resilient Wales. And I have to declare an interest here. I was one of those who back in 2014 drafted that particular Wellbeing Goal, and I'm very protective of it. And of course it relates to the environment, and it's all about, as it says in the wording here, maintaining and enhancing a biodiverse natural environment, etc., and so on. But the way it's presented in the report, at the bottom of page 19, is sort of saying that energy efficient council homes, affordable housing, etc., will bring wider environmental benefits. Well, yes, they will. I'm not disputing that. But that's not really, in my view, where it should be appearing. It's not a resilient Wales. I mean, this may just be a matter of poor drafting. I don't know. But I think we do need to understand, I've said this in other places, that a resilient Wales, the wellbeing goal, is first and foremost about maintaining and enhancing a healthy environment and, of course, combating climate change. But having said that, obviously a healthy environment is important for people in tackling poverty, as it is for all of us. And I wondered if you wanted to make any points in relation to that particular issue, the role of a healthy natural environment in helping people to cope with poverty.
I noticed Louise has put her hand up. Do you want to come in first, Louise?
Yeah, if that's okay. I mean, I think if it's okay for me to talk on this point, I think you're right, Peter. And I know obviously you're part of the Poverty PDC, which has been looking at the sort of developing a policy around access to green spaces. You might be interested to know as well that NRW are part of our Human Rights City steering group as well, and we sort of I don't want to preempt the engagement and the priorities that come out of that, but it has been raised about, you know, is access to a clean environment, a green space, etc., a human right, and I think you're definitely right that it's about living. It is about those well-being goals and living a good life. And unfortunately, for people in poverty, not always having such good access. But it's definitely something that we are, you know, it's part of the plan that we build that into our policies and practices, as you know. So just sort of wanted to chip in on that bit. Alison or Amy, I don't know if you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, only just to say, you know, even from the houses point of view, because within my ward in Llansamlet, we've had the council's energy efficient houses, you know, and for lots of people in poverty, heating their house is you know, beyond their abilities to be able to do so, or not adequately heating the house, choosing when you can put the heat on, or do you buy food. But if you you know, have one of these houses where the bills are so minimum, you know, reduced so much because they're energy efficient, then that is, you know, that's a huge, that means that they can put food on the table, you know. So we you know, you're right, Peter, you know, it obviously all has to link in, and does link in to the well-being goals and everything, you know, and we're trying to, as I said, reduce those fuel bills, which we all know at the moment are going up, you know. So the more of the greenhouses we have, the better, and people will be warm. You know, I'm sure I can see somebody's hand up. I'm assuming it's Anthony or Amy.
It's Amy.
Yeah.
Okay, Amy, do you want to come in?
Thank you. Yeah, I take the point that we could have used another example as well. I think they were just examples that we put in terms of the report. But as mentioned in the beginning of the report, this is such a cross-authority response in terms of the corporate priority. You know, many different departments are doing different initiatives that might have a primary purpose for one thing, but it also impacts on poverty. And I think it's just worth referencing that. And along with the energy efficient homes and the climate change actions as well, I think we were also looking at the access to high quality green spaces, and as Councillor Gibbard has mentioned already, that work's being developed through the PDC at the moment, but just knowing that has a positive environmental impact as well as the health impact and well-being for individuals. But also the focus around economic regeneration and our employability support, and knowing that we're supporting people to develop skills for the green economy as well. So that's a really key focus as well. That crosses a number of different teams at the moment.
Yeah, thank you to Cabinet members and Amy, of course, for your responses. My only concern here is to protect the integrity of the wellbeing objective, which was designed for a purpose. And I sometimes worry that the concept of a resilient Wales is being hijacked to support other purposes that it was not designed to deliver. But thank you for, and I fully understand your responses. Thank you, Chair.
It's a very resilient clause, Peter.
Sorry?
A very resilient clause. Okay, right. I got Mike White now on access to advice. Mike, you there?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And thank you to the Cabinet members for the poverty. It's a tremendous report, I can be fair. You know, a lot of detailed context in it. But what I would like to ask is, in regarding the access to advice, are there any intentions to set up one-stop shops within communities to support families? Perhaps if we could look at using perhaps a room within a school for parents or carers, or community centres or other people that's living in the community. What are the council's intentions on perhaps rolling out one-stop shops?
Okay.
Alison, yeah.
Yeah, please. Yeah, no, it's a good question, and it is something that we've really sort of invested in. You know, we have obviously lots of online services, and even more so throughout COVID, to help people and everybody how to access, you know, but we do have early help hubs in social services. Our employability teams have hubs. One has just opened up in Bonamine, you know, where everybody are. We have common access points. We have our local area coordinators who are out there in the field to, you know, to support people. Our libraries are back open, and lots of the projects bring libraries up to date, and they can get access there. You know, we've got Davati, the shops that we've taken over in Davati. The first one is about to open, and that will see many officers and third sector people becoming in and out there, being there. People, that's going to grow organically there and be guided by the community of what they want there. But lots of the employability, welfare rights, poverty, of RIAs with the community cohesion, you know, people will be around there. And of course, we've got the British Home Stores that is now going to be a hub as well. That's still in the sort of planning stage of who will be there, I think. But again, the aim of it is that it's that cross section of people, third sector and council, there to support. So I suppose it's you know, it's lovely to say that actually we have got a lot of help out there, Mike, you know, for people, and visible help.
Louise?
Yeah, just to add to what Alison said, really, the community hub model is definitely still one that we are sort of looking at, and as you referenced, Alison, and in the question, Mike, that you gave us in advance, it does for the new building on Oxford Street. The idea of that very much is that it's going to be, you know, community services in one place. And as Alison said, it was, you know, it's not confirmed who's going to be there yet, but I think that's definitely the point in it, and hopefully that will be really successful, and we can look at how that model is working in the city centre and community hubs then elsewhere.
Okay, Peter, do you want to? On term access to green space, food and poverty. I noticed we've referenced green space in passing already, haven't we?
Yes, I think we've already had a look at green space and the importance of green space to all of us, not just to people in poverty, but perhaps especially to people in deprived circumstances. So moving on then to food poverty. And of course, we've all become very aware over the last 20 months or so of the impact of not just of COVID, but of other circumstances, including asylum seekers and refugees who've come to live with us here in Swansea. I know that many have been involved, as I have, with food banks and so on. But one of the important measures that we can take in terms of combating food poverty, of course, is to encourage and show people how they can grow their own food. And I see that this is a policy commitment of the council to try to support community enterprises and so on in this regard. I mean, I'm involved with the development of a community garden in Sketty Cross in my own ward, and I'm hoping that that will produce some results in due course. But in terms of what we've been doing, can someone comment on the impact that the policy has made in terms of encouraging community food growing? How successful has the support been? And which parts of Swansea in particular have been targeted and benefited? Thank you.
Who wants to go on this one? Alison?
If I come in then, perhaps Louise talk about the spaces and things like that. Perhaps I don't know if I talk about the grants, perhaps that, you know, we've been fortunate enough to be able to have funding from different areas like the Assembly and also from within the council, and we've given grants out to the men's sheds, and very often most of the men's sheds have got gardens, you know, that they grow in vegetables in. The one in Peter, you award
St John's Day Centre.
That's right. You know, I went there and you know, to see it, and it's a large garden, and there was lots of, and they were growing, and it's behind an older people's complex, and the people come out and they sort of deadhead flowers, and they sort of help their residents, and the food from there goes into the food bank, and therefore people get fresh vegetables. Was fantastic, and you know, just for us to be able to help people, you know, organizations like that. Anthony has been heavily involved in the grants and managing them, and we've helped many a food bank with grants for growing food, specifically for the growing food. So again, these fresh vegetables can go in, but also we've given grants to community centres to improve kitchens so that food can be cooked and you know, and given out. And you know, there's £450,000 of grants gone out. Some of them in regards to, it's all under poverty. Some of them specifically for the food growing. You know, some through other ways like men's shed. But it's been absolutely amazing to see over the last sort of couple of years that we've been doing this. The men's sheds often make the planters, you know, for and everything. So even if they're not growing themselves, they often will do the carpentry side that then will help perhaps the food bank to grow. So, you know, and again, cooking skills. We desperately need more courses to teach people how to cook. And we're really hoping that that will happen in Devati. That is the intention there for lifelong learning, to be heavily involved, teach people basic skills. And there's been many projects right across Swansea, Peter, you know, from, well, you know, Sketty Food Bank has received, to my area in Birch Grove here, to, you know, Bonamine. So there's not any one specific place. It has been across the council, you know, and many people, because the intention is that the people in the community then benefit from that. Do you know what I mean? So, Louise, do you want to update on the spaces wise?
I don't know if I can really. I think I've got a lot to add to that. I think, yeah, we are looking at developing, again, as you know, with the PDC, a community food growing policy to enable groups, if there is a bit of land, without having to go through the whole process of community asset transfer and things like that. So, you know, we're hoping, because there are more and more people coming forward saying they want to grow food for themselves and their neighbours, and looking at garden sharing and those kind of initiatives. I mean, I can't answer. I haven't got the answer on terms of like measuring the impact. It might be too soon to tell in a lot of cases, because obviously a lot of these grants have gone out in the last year or so. I don't know, Amy, you might be able to put you on the spot. You might be able to give a bit more info on that.
Yeah, can I pass to Tony actually? Okay. Sorry, I've done some prep for this. So, yeah, if that's okay. Tony.
Good afternoon, all, and yeah, thanks very much for bringing tackling poverty to scrutiny and considering the reports. Much appreciated that you have a look at the work we do. Yeah, I'll just try to perhaps fill in some further information then about the food poverty grant. So it's £450,000 worth of funding that we've distributed to over 100 projects across Swansea since 2019, tackling food poverty and food insecurity. And that so we've encouraged organisations to apply for that funding, and it falls under three main categories really: providing crisis food support, encouraging community food growing projects, and developing cooking skills projects. Obviously, in terms of the impact that funding's had, when it first went out, it was 2019, so just pre-pandemic. And the feedback that we've had from organisations that have benefited from that funding is that it's been instrumental in supporting them to be able to deal with the increased level of demands that they've seen as a result of the COVID pandemic, because as the report highlights, the COVID pandemic has disproportionately affected low-income households. So we've seen huge increases in the number of people needing access to crisis support. So the funding has been extremely helpful in supporting right across Swansea people to access food who need that access. Yeah, and as it was said, in terms of where in Swansea has benefited, it really is really wide. From projects in city centre like Matthew's House, who during the pandemic teamed up with so many organisations that were involved in the Swansea Together project, which was getting hot meals out to vulnerably housed people during the pandemic. I mean, that people right across Swansea benefited from that. Projects have been supported in Blaen y Maes through to Caitan in Gower, with their community supported agriculture project, which then is out doing outreach projects in places like Clydach and working with schools. Sketty Food Bank was mentioned, St Thomas, Townhill, Birch Grove was also mentioned, Pont de Lais. It's a long list. I'm not going to read out a huge list, but really the funding has been really right across Swansea. So as part of the kind of ongoing monitoring, it is a bit early to tell how this year's, as we can move out of the last year was very much around that crisis support and supporting organisations that are supporting people to stay open, have the supplies that they need. As we move into this year now, it's more around we know that the impact of the pandemic is ongoing for people that have been affected by it, low-income households. So it's more now about trying to put things in position around how we can support people not to be dependent on that support, food bank support. So there's a few kind of projects that are looking at that, and certainly looking at how we can develop really encouraging kind of community growing, and adding to that, linking it all together with developing cooking skills as well. There's been an increase in projects that are doing cooking skills in this year's grant compared to previous year's grants, which is really good to see, because we've really tried to push to encourage that. So yeah, it's something that we have put a huge amount of priority on over certainly during the pandemic. And it remains a high priority for us in our team as well. And we meet monthly with organisations that are involved in the crisis food provision across Swansea. We have a monthly Swansea Food Poverty Network where we update about funding that's available. We encourage them to share resources, share learning, and we look to identify gaps, develop resources that they can use with people that they're supporting to help signpost them to support that's available. I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. One of the things to come out of all of this, of course, is the upswelling of volunteers right across Swansea, and I suspect across the country. It's been astounding. And I know from my own experience here in Sketty with the food bank and so on, we were overwhelmed to the point that we didn't know what to do with people sometime. It's wonderful. It's been absolutely wonderful, and one hopes that this can continue into the future. I mean, one final comment I would make: asylum seekers. I know Alison is well up to speed, in particular. I'm sure Louise as well on this issue. Asylum seekers are not permitted paid work. They receive a pittance from the central government on which to live. It's just about pays for a bus fare each day. So they're entirely dependent, certainly the ones I'm aware of, on food banks, the support of the community. So this whole process has been absolutely invaluable. Sadly, I suspect it's going to have to continue for some time yet.
Yeah.
Maybe the day will come when we don't need food banks anymore, but at the moment that looks to be some way off. So it's been a wonderful experience from that point of view, a positive experience, but I wish we didn't have to do it. Thank you, Chair.
Can I just ask a follow-up question? In policy terms, are we more now interested in developing community gardens as opposed to allotments? Are allotments sort of put to one side and left where they are, or are we looking at developing those as well?
I don't think it's one or the other. It just depends on what people want to do, really. And I think community gardens are probably easier and less bureaucratic to organise. There's a lot more rules and things. But so I wouldn't say we're sort of favouring one over the other. But we're looking at enabling people who want to grow food and need the space to do it as easily and as quickly as possible. Really, I think. So yeah, definitely not ruling out allotments. It's just I
mean, allotments don't just happen, of course. You've got to find the land, you've got to plan, you've got to get planning, you've got to get the people. So, I mean, you're not really doing much on that at the moment. You're concentrating on the community gardens as opposed to doing that. It's really what I'm asking.
Yeah, that I would agree with that. Yeah, Alison's had her hand up then. So.
Yeah, I need to say that Lewis Hines has drawn up a sort of, he's identified in each ward areas of land that the council will never use or sell, that are no good for building on. Or and he sent me the one for my ward, and there was like 23 areas that could be used for growing if people wanted to. Like Louise said, you haven't got the bureaucracy and the red tape of an allotment. This would be open to anybody to grow on, and it's to be shared. It's not like, Mr. Jones does it and only Mr. Jones can benefit from it, sort of thing. But we haven't quite got there. But that initial work of knowing where these areas are has been done. I suppose the PDC and everybody now, we need to just turn it into a way of working and getting people to know that they can do it, but.
Okay, I look forward to seeing that list for my ward, which is very heavily built. But okay, let's move on then. Mike White on earnings.
Yes, thank you, Chair, again. Yes, thank you. Two-pronged, really. Alison, in regards to the annual survey of hours of earnings, I noticed that in regards to the median of earnings, could you just inform us, would people probably have to have more than one job to come up to that level of earnings? And are you able to perhaps give us sort of any sort of insight if the council have been made aware of these circumstances? And also in regards to the employability, you mentioned earlier on about people helping people within jobs and that. Have there been any areas been flagged up or concerns in regard to making it difficult for people perhaps to gain employment? Perhaps if they don't drive and they got to rely on public transport to get to a place where they've been offered employment. Are you able to give us any information if this has been made aware to the teams? Thank you, Alison.
I'm laughing, Mike, sorry, because I'm going to try and stop myself from going on my soapbox for you, because
yeah, please don't. Yeah.
This is the latter part of your question then about the transport is a massive issue for us and for the employability team and people. We've just been approached by one employer who has 50 job vacancies that works on a shift cycle, but he can't get, and our employability team can't match people up to it because there's no buses in most of the areas to start at 6 o'clock in the morning or come home at 10 o'clock at night. I wouldn't say where I live is that rural. It's 6 miles from the city centre. But if you've got a job that finishes after 9 o'clock, you can forget it. There's no bus coming up here. So and that's out of our control. We don't manage we don't own the buses. You know, it's very, very difficult for people. And like Amazon have got, they put buses on and one thing and another, and they are large employers for us. And in COVID, that helped keep our figures up really compared to other areas, because we had large take-ons in DVLA, you know, Amazon, Admiral sort of thing. But it's the transport for most people that is very difficult. One young lad said he'd been offered a job in Tesco's as a cleaner in Uplands, but he lived in Forest Fach and he couldn't get there. You know, so but then they sanctioned if they turn the jobs down, you know, and in regards to people working extra jobs, yeah, absolutely, definitely. You know, we have a lot of in-work poverty and people having to take extra hours. But if they're on universal credit then or anything, if they increase hours, that gets, you know, reduced. They get caught in this cycle of everything going wrong for them. In it, if they you know, what they give them with one hand is taken away with another. You know, so we have lots of people holding down numerous jobs, not claiming benefits, sometimes because it's easier to try and do it this way, but the quality of life is hard. And, you know, for lots of our residents, they don't earn that average wage. Do you know what I mean? It is difficult out there. There was, you know, the employability teams are we got about 30 different projects with it under the umbrella. We've got a fabulous Kickstart program that have just started, where we're trying to get people in, give them 6 months paid work experience, train them up in the hope that they then got the skills for the jobs. But it is hard, and everything comes with targets. You know, that's to be, you have to be on universal credit, you have to be under 25, everything comes with parameters, isn't it, that you have to work within. So it's not easy out there. And I'm sure there was a third part to what you asked me, Mike. But I can't remember what it was now.
Mike, I think it's another part. You're muted at the moment.
You're on mute, Mike.
Yeah.
Whoop. Have we lost Mike?
No, he's there.
Yeah,
Oh,
right. Yeah. No, as I say, it was really about the issue mainly around people who've been offered employment, and also the medium of the earnings.
Yes, yeah, and you know, absolutely right that lots of people are not anywhere near the level that you know, that medium wage sort of thing, and they, as you said, they have to top it up. And many, I can speak of my own ward alone, people are not on that money and they are struggling. You know, we're expecting people to survive on a pittance, really. And in COVID, the amount of times welfare rights got asked by people that had never claimed benefits before was, this can't be right. This can't be right. How can I possibly be only having this amount of money? How can I possibly be asked to survive on this? And, you know, their answer had to be, but that is what people have to survive on and live on. And, you know, it is nothing. And that £20 has been taken back off people now. You know, that's £80 a month. That is beyond. I don't know. I can't fathom it in these times of hardship. How on earth people are supposed to manage? But there's lots of barriers out there. Like childcare, everything. COVID put all those pressures on. It made it even worse for people. How could they hold down jobs? How could they, if the schools weren't open and the childcare services weren't open, how could people hold down what work they did have? You know, sorry, I see Amy wants to come in.
Yeah, Amy, yeah.
Thank you. I only just wanted to reference an area in the report that just supports what Alison was just saying on page 5, which shows the claimant count rates, and you can see the absolute spike that hit us at the start of COVID, and it's just showing how many people did have to claim those additional benefits, whether it was moved onto universal credit because their hours dropped and they fell below the thresholds, and so the information is there. And just to those just to add quickly around some of the barriers we're facing, another barrier is around financial barriers, that people can't afford to go into the job because of the gap that they're going to have in the pay as well. So they know they're not going to be paid for 4 or 5 weeks. That can be a real barrier because people instantly need money for rent, bills, transport, childcare, work clothes, etc. A number of our programmes will support through different grants, small grants, to sort of support people with elements of this, be it transport for the first month, but it still is a barrier. And there is another sort of almost unseen barrier around work experience, particularly in the last 2 years because of COVID restrictions, just around opportunities for placements. And so people aren't being experienced. And it's, whilst there are more jobs than we've seen for a while, different jobs, people aren't always having the experience or the opportunities to go into those jobs, and we're seeing that particularly with the younger age group. So that's why the Kickstart scheme that Councillor Pugh mentioned, we're really keen on seeing the outcomes of that as well.
Of course, the transition was meant to be covered by universal credit, wasn't it? And that hasn't quite worked out in terms of going from unemployment to job and covering those differences in income levels. But can I just ask a question in terms of the objectives? On page 20, you set out, I think, is it 8 objectives for the Tackling Poverty service, and then a bit further on from page 23 onwards, you put the corporate tackling poverty performance measures. Now, as the thing has been said already, this report is very detailed. There's a lot of stuff in here, a lot of good stuff in here, but most of it is inputs as opposed to outputs. So I'm just wondering, in terms of those particular objectives, which is obviously what you're working to achieve, how are you measuring those objectives, and how are we able to assess your success if you haven't got if they don't marry up to the delivery and performance measures which the council has at the moment? Because the delivery and performance measures are the statutory ones which we have to deliver on behalf of Welsh Government, but the objectives themselves are slightly different to that, as they should be, but they don't seem to have performance measures and objectives where we can measure how successful you are in, for example, increasing the number of residents in sustainable and fulfilling employment. How can we measure success? Anybody? Who's coming on now? Alison, you're muted, Alison.
Sorry, I don't mind coming in, but the officers would answer clearer than me. I can, because my passion is welfare rights, to say, if you look at the figures, you will show that, we've got over 95, I think, the year before, % success in appeals with the welfare rights. We can measure things like that, employability, lots of measuring tools. We can measure the success rate of getting people into jobs.
Against what's objective, though?
When the grants come in, very often as well, there's clear objectives within the funding of what you have to achieve. And like I said, there's about 30 projects with employability, and they'll all have their own objectives that they have to meet as well. So it is very complex out there, but all those are measurable. And the welfare rights, the amount of people will be monitored over, especially in COVID now, we'll have seen those calls go up. We have to have that evidence. We're growing the welfare rights team. We can only do that because we can prove that we need more officers, that we need more help in the community. Do you know what I mean? So, but I'm sure Amy will give a far more detailed and better answer than me.
Because of course you can measure objectives, but you need to have what targets are you measuring them against? Amy, perhaps you could or Anthony could help.
I'll start, but we might go to double approach on this. No, it's definitely an area where we want to do some more work on. I think that's fair to say, because I think we measure so much, and we do have those sort of grant conditions that we measure. We also know, because it's a cross authority approach, different teams, and then, as I mentioned earlier, those examples of the sort of secondary outcome is a tackling poverty measure rather than the primary one as well. So there's this aspect of the work. we had our original tackling poverty strategy, which had measures in it, and obviously we've had to respond to COVID so dramatically, I suppose, in the last 20 months that's shifted our focus and identified new objectives as well, or sort of increased the priority of others. It is an area we want to work on more to try and really identify what good looks like. I suppose that's where I want to see it, and sort of say, if we achieve the optimum, what does good look like, and then how do we measure ourselves against that? Because some of it is challenging, and I suppose that's why we're in the final pages of the report. We were trying to say this is these are our priorities going forward. We think, based on the evidence, based on feedback, this will go through a process in the coming months just to sort of refine these in terms of what the priorities are, but we'll ensure then there's some clear objectives alongside those and some measurements that really align to those. At the moment, though, we've only just given you a flavour in the 30 pages of the type of things that are measured as well. We haven't given you all of it, and I suppose that's what to bear that in mind as well. So if there's something that particularly of interest to the committee, we'd be pleased to provide it.
Yeah, I think you understand. I mean, if you're spending what £4.5 million in resources in terms of tackling poverty, it's over 5 million this year, then and you have 8 objectives. I think it's important from a scrutiny perspective that we can see whether that money is actually being effective, whether you're achieving your objectives, and where you're not achieving those objectives, because then we can then say, well, okay, this objective is falling behind. What more do you need to do to achieve it? And that's why I think I'm looking for, if you have objectives, which you've set out 8 of them, and I think it's important that we actually are able to measure exactly how you're achieving those objectives. And in a sense, if I had a criticism of this report, it's there's so many inputs and outputs here that you're not actually able to measure that properly and actually define what is success. There's a lot of little successes there, but overall, in terms of achieving the objectives, what is success?
Absolutely, yeah, and we recognise that, and I think it's everything combined at the moment. But can I just double check, when you're talking about the 8 objectives, do you mean the 8 performance indicators, the corporate performance indicators aligned to?
No, on page 20 there are tackling poverty service objectives.
Okay.
8 bullet points there, I think. Is it 8?
So
yeah.
If I can just have an opportunity to clarify on that. So that's about the tackling poverty service, which is one part of the whole response to tackling poverty, and then the 4 million is spent on what was the old poverty and prevention department.
Yeah. So okay, fair enough. Yeah.
So sorry, it's all.
But I think as a service and as a key corporate objective, we need to know what are the objectives and how are they being achieved, and that's what I was looking for in terms of scrutiny here. And maybe when we come back to look at this, maybe in the next council term, maybe we could start focusing on. I know it's been a really difficult 2 years with COVID, but maybe we can start focusing in on that to see how effective we are being in terms of alleviating poverty or tackling poverty, whichever we're doing. Yeah. So okay.
Certainly agreed. Yeah, certainly. I'd hope to see it's the what's on page 30, the final page. When we look at the priorities, we'll align those then with the performance information that we already gather, but also ensuring then to some of the national indicators is an area that we think we can focus on as well, and also how we can see a direct link between the action, the investment, the action, and the what it's achieved as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. Has anybody else got any other questions at all on this? We've worked our way through the questions we agreed beforehand. No? Oh, hang on. Alexander.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks everyone for a really comprehensive report. As a co-opted member representing primary schools in Swansea, I've got some questions just about the schools aspect and access in particular to education for children of homeless folks out there and people experiencing poverty. My first comment is just to clarify that the report actually says Appendix A at the top throughout. Are we missing something out of this report, or is that an error, please?
It's an appendix to I think there's a page at the front which is the main report, and the appendix is attached to it. So it's just format, I think, Alex.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
So on page 3, it talks about making sure a priority that poverty is not a barrier to academic success. And I suppose this follows on from Peter's point about measures of success. And I totally get that you folks can't change poverty. and actually, this report is is as much about describing the status of poverty in our community as much as the efforts to try and tackle that. But I wondered, you know, we're here to scrutinise the work of this strategic priority, and can I just ask a simple question? Is poverty still a barrier to academic success?
Anybody?
Shall I come in? I mean, the
Yeah, go on,
statistics tell us. The statistics tell us, yes, different academic studies, yeah, certainly. But please, sorry, yeah.
Which is what the Pupil Development Grant is all about, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, so I know from previous.
Sorry, perhaps I could just frame it a little bit because it's so broad, isn't it? What I'm trying to get at is, are the activities of the council trying to mitigate poverty being a barrier to academic success? How do we know that our activities are reducing that barrier? Are they reducing it, or is that barrier to academic success actually increasing under our watch? How do we know?
Well, I think it's something that was brought up before in education scrutiny, really.
Oh, I get it. Yeah.
Looked at in a lot of detail there when I was previously on that committee. So, and I think, as Councillor Black mentioned, you know, there's the Pupil Deprivation Grant and a lot of targeted work going on in schools, looking at free school meal pupils and value added and all that kind of stuff. But I can't answer in a sentence really. But
well, yeah, okay, thanks. Anybody else?
Alison.
If you look at COVID and the immediate response that was so crucial around food and roofs overhead and everything, and Anthony and Amy will remember we were locked in a room as soon as we and with Sue Reid, and our immediate thing was to make sure that everybody was going to be receiving food, all the children in school with free school meals that often for some and for children it might be the only meal of the day. It was an absolute massive priority for us. And, through working with all the organisations out there and everything, we made sure that the children had meals. We made sure that there was food delivered to the house or whatever, if per school, we done the welfare checks on the child when you see in, we tried to help with benefits, because we know, how can a child achieve if they're hungry?
Alison, sorry, can I stop you? Because all that detail is in the report, and I thank everyone for the detail in the report. What I'm just trying to really get at is the measure of success behind our activities. I know about COVID, and I'm not holding you guys responsible for any barrier. Yeah, you are not the barrier to our academic success. But how do we know our activities are mitigating poverty as a barrier to success? And if we can't answer that question in what is a very detailed report, and I commend you on it, I think we need to be able to answer that question moving forward. And I totally get the point from the councillor that within education scrutiny itself, we're asking this question. We need to be able to answer the question that our activities are having an effect. The same as the Pupil Deprivation Grant should have an effect. But if we can't prove it's having an effect, then we might be just wasting money. And I'm not saying anybody's wasting their time. And all the activities providing food are absolutely worthy. But what I'm saying is we need to be able to show that our investment in time, people's time and the money is paying dividends. And I challenge you guys to be able to answer that question.
So maybe one example, and Amy, correct me if I'm wrong here, Jermaine, I might be on the wrong tangent, but with, I think it was Peter that brought up about asylum seekers and refugees earlier, and we knew that they were extremely vulnerable immediately, because if you're only allowed £5 a day and you can't go to the shop to spend that £5, how do you even buy food? How do you even, so, and we as much as we were going there with food parcels and things like that, we hit a point in time where the system needed to alter. And it wasn't just in Swansea, everyone. So our education department, Kelly there worked with SEVS, worked with Helen Clancy, our officers and everything. And they, between everybody, managed to be able to pay people directly, to be able to get the food, to have the money, to be able to shop, and also identified shops that would, take, even offering them cards that they could. There was, you could measure it. It was felt. It was noticeable. You know?
I'm sorry, Alison, I have to cut you off on that. I don't feel,
okay.
I know what you're talking about, but
Okay.
it's not demonstrable. So can I
Okay,
ask
can-
in future,
can I-
sorry,
can I-
Chair, but can I just say that it should be measurable and we should be
Yeah,
able to
okay.
find this out in future?
Can I possibly assist? Because as the person who's responsible for negotiating the pupil development grant in the first place with the Welsh government, there are clear measurements attached to that. And
So
the
I'm
Welsh
talking
government,
about this
yeah,
strategic
I
priority.
know. Let me just come in. And the Welsh government do I've done a lot of work on measuring its effectiveness. If anything, I think maybe we can start looking at that as part of this agenda as well as a council. But there's a lot of work done on the effectiveness of the pupil development grant in terms of helping those pupils who are poorer than their peers in actually achieving better. But let's bring Amy in and maybe she can say a few words as well.
Thank you. We haven't even included large sections in the report around the work of Flying Start, Families First. You know, these are all initiatives that are happening directly with early years and children and young people. Our rights team are funded under the poverty and prevention funding as well. So all this work is contributing. The free school meals, the pupil a uniform grant. You know, there's a number of things around the cost of a school day, just bringing it back to the money, but actually it's also about involvement as well. Our family learning, which we know is encouraging children to attend school as well, because the families are more engaged with the learning. So there's a number of initiatives, and that's why, you know, 30 pages doesn't say enough, but I definitely, you know, I made a note. We'll be pleased to incorporate this and bring this back in the terms you've just explained.
Yeah, I think when we revisit this, I was talking about measuring objectives. Maybe this is one objective we can include next when we revisit this in the next assembly, next council term, and looking to see, you know, how the agenda is helping those poorer pupils achieve. Because after all, if they can have the skills to succeed, then that will lift them out of poverty as well.
Well, yeah. I think, thank you very much for those comments. And I think in my mind, there's a distinction between access to education and enabling access to education. And the wording in this report, which I can only focus on, I haven't seen all the stuff that hasn't been included, which are barriers to academic success. So defining what that success looks like, that's all I'm really focusing on. Enabling access to education is so important, and I commend you on doing it. But if we're talking about academic success, what is that? And I think it's just a little bit opaque at the moment, the detail on that.
I think there's a lot of work being done on that anyway, but okay, I think the point has been made. Jeff Jones.
Yeah, I agree with Alexander. You know, I think we've got to measure something. You know, we can't keep pumping money into something. There needs to be some sort of output actually from it. You know, I've always been, we're not confused really, but you know, we're actually talking about free school meals as if it's a tag really put on children as some sort of, you know, a minus tag. But we've got some schools with people with free school meals who excel. And, you know, and why do they excel compared to other pupils in other schools that don't excel? Again, on free school meals. You know, have we actually looked at that? You know, why is there a success factor in one part and not in the other?
Yeah. Okay. Can I just pick you up on the school meals issue? As you know, there has been controversy in one North Wales authority where the head teacher effectively denied pupils from accessing meals because they were maybe 1 penny in debt on the. Now that is actually our policy too. But our policy does also include some leeway for head teachers to be able to enable that. But that leeway is not being exercised in every school. And in some schools, parents are being told that if your child is in debt, they will not be able to serve the meal. So is it possible to have a look at how our policy is being used across the authority? Because I know for a fact I've had parents come to talk to me to say that their pupils, their child is not being allowed to have meals because the account is not in credit. And I think that is quite important. And obviously part of that policy is if a child is struggling, then the parents should be shown how they can access free school meals as part of that. But I'm not convinced that every school is doing that, and I know that some schools are not. So I think that's something which could be looked at, you know, as well.
Yeah, I think that's obviously something I have to raise with education colleagues, but I think you know, with consistency is the key there, and that nobody is being left hungry because of factors outside their control. Definitely.
Okay.
Can I just say
Alison,
that we
yeah.
most certainly don't just measure children on free school meals. You know, lots of problems in the schools are the fact that if somebody's on universal credit, it very often just tips them over into not being able to access free school meals.
Yeah.
But there's no way does that difference cover what £20 per child or something per week for meals in school. So you know, when we're talking about parents who can't pay, they literally, it would be their week shopping that they've got to try and pay for the school meals. But our benefit system forces them into that. But there are many measures, and you're right. Of course, not all children on free school meals. There are children that are going to achieve and do very well, because just because they're in that financial situation doesn't mean their home life, that there's anything wrong with their home life. They might have the most nurturing, loving, caring family. Do you know what I mean? So you can't just say because somebody's on free school meals they won't achieve, because we know that's not true. But if they are on free school meals, plus they're having abuse in the house, plus all the other things that can go with deprivation and everything else, then the obstacles are huge for them to overcome.
Yeah, those statistics do show that children on free school meals do worse than their
Yes,
peers,
of course.
and that's the issue which we're trying to tackle.
It's a crude measurement, but it's based on research.
Yeah. Alex, do you want to come back very briefly? I want to move on to the next item if we can.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to commend the report as well, the activities of the team in keeping the numbers of nights that families spend in B&Bs down to a minimum. That is brilliant in terms of access to education. But can you just tell me what School of Sanctuary is, please?
I think it's an initiative working with City of Sanctuary, isn't it, to encourage schools to embody those principles that the City of Sanctuary organisation signs up to. So I think there are a number of schools that in Swansea that have taken that on and achieved that status. So it's like to show that they are welcoming, open organisations to asylum seekers and refugees and everybody in the community. So
thank you very much.
Sue Jones.
Just a comment, really. I know the schools have done a tremendous job in making certain that all children, whether they are on free meals or not, have had equipment in order to complete their education during this time. And I think that should be commended to all the schools. They haven't looked at poverty, they've looked at the children. Just a comment.
Yeah, fair comment, yeah. Okay, unless there's any more questions, can I thank Louise and Alison, Amy and Anthony for coming along and giving evidence today. It's been very helpful, and I think you can see the thrust of where we want to go in terms of scrutinising this in the future. So we'll look forward to coming back to this agenda in the next council term. It will be now, because obviously there's only a few months left to the elections. So thank you very much indeed for that. It's been very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to move on to item 7, which is the Scrutiny Performance Panel Progress Report, and Jeff Jones is going to talk about development on Regeneration Scrutiny Performance Panel. Jeff.
Oh, thanks, Peter. I don't know, talk about it really.
Well, you can present your report then.
Yeah, the report is as you actually see it anyway, I'm quite amazed. We've only had 3 meetings since the last report actually came. Anyway, just a couple of points actually on there. You can see we had a visit to the arena. I think nearly all members actually went on the visit. I must admit it was a hive of activity, as everybody could actually see. It's quite a compact space at the end of the day. It's not a huge area. And everybody was, busy bees. I know they're actually having present problems with regards to, there's a COVID outbreak on site, problems with actually getting materials, and of course, a labour shortage. But we've been assured really that, work will be completed by March. I think the first act is in March anyway, so it's got to be completed at the end of the day. Yeah, we walked all around the area. The seating capacity of the arena is 2,420. They keep actually quoting a figure of 3,005. I'm not quite sure where the 3,005 actually comes from. I'm assuming if you take out the seats,
yeah, that's standing room.
Yeah, it's standing room. That's where you'll actually get it. You know, it's. I think the hardest part is actually going to come, that the arena really needs to be a success at the end of the day. I know the panel have voiced their concerns over the long-term affordability really of the project, but you know, let's wait and see. It's one of the keystones of the development anyway. Another part of the City Deal project was the Box Village in SA1, which hasn't actually started yet. Unfortunately, the private section actually is pulled out of that, but perhaps on a good point. This is Trinity St David's, by the way. They are actually going to meet the cost of the project. I think there was a little bit of duplication in the project there with regards to what the local authority are actually doing in the Kingsway and what the Box Village was intending to do. And I think there's a little bit of overlap there, and I think they've gone back and actually re-looked at it. The other university, i.e. Swansea University, very interesting visit actually from them. They're looking to have some sort of mid-tech and sports tech facility actually on the Singleton campus and also up in Morriston. Not a great deal actually of information with regards to, you know, the planning and what it'll entail, but hopefully that'll result in you know, jobs at the end of the day. You know, going back to poverty, you know, what we need really are quite well-paid jobs at the to hopefully eradicate poverty. The only other part I'm actually going to comment on, we had a travel plan report. I think we've been waiting for this for about a year. I know there were comments actually in the meeting to say that, oh, you know, we've heard this all before, but you know, hopefully this will be different. In essence, it was actually looking at the city centre, not the wider aspect actually of Swansea. Of course, they're looking to, it's not affecting the road infrastructure, by the way. I think except for, you know, one particular road up by SA1. In essence, as I said, is to try and get people to get out of their cars. We've all heard of active travel. There's a West Wales metro as well, which I think will involve some parts of you know, train journey and also buses and so on. And of course also the park and ride, hoping to well, relocate some of the park and rides. I think it was mentioned about Pontedilais and Gorsainon there. Some of the panel members voiced concerns, you know, what about the west of Swansea? I think one of the members actually said there's about 5,000 cars a day that actually come from the west of Swansea, and perhaps, you know, why can't we put something in Blackpill at the end of the day? Also put forward, you know, why can't we actually have perhaps free bus travel? I know it was mentioned in the last item on scrutiny. You know, we got free bus travel for under 18s, which was brought in a few years ago. And, you know, why can't we have free bus travel really for all, you know, perhaps even at certain times of the day? Yeah, I don't think I can comment it actually anymore on it. We've got a few interesting items coming up on the work plan. And as I said, hopefully the city deal will be a success at the end of the day. And let's see how things pan out.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Anybody got any comments or questions on that? No? Okay, thanks for that, Jeff. Thanks very much for that. Okay, item 8, membership of scrutiny panels and working groups. There's been no changes. You'll note in the report the road safety working group membership is set out, and that has been arranged to meet on the 9th of February 2022. So that's hopefully will be able to come back to us with some ideas which we can then send to the cabinet member on that. And then we have the scrutiny work programme on item 9. Is it item 9? Yeah, item 9, which is set out there in terms of what we're doing. just to note that the Child and Family Services panel has also been adjusted in light of the COVID-related current pressures in the service. So both of those panels are meeting, I think, less frequently and trying to assist officers in coping with the actual demand which is on those services. And clearly that may go on for a bit of time, though I think at some stage we're going to have to revisit that and see, you know, how we can readjust that. And also to report that the scrutiny arrangements on the new South West Wales Education Partnership, to be called, I'm not even going to pronounce this, Partneriaeth, have now been published, and Cabinet on Thursday will be looking at the draft legal agreement, and they'll be setting up a joint scrutiny councillor group, similar to the arrangement we had for ERU, with terms of reference set out in the legal agreement, and that group is going to scrutinise the work of the regional partnership, which will support the delivery of school improvement and ensure greater public accountability over decisions made. And obviously we'll want assurance that that partnership is operating effectively and its business plan is being managed effectively. So once that's established, and responsibility for scrutiny report, we'll have a look at that, and it'll be looking at the joint committee which comprises the leaders of the three councils, which is the strategic decision-making body on that partnership. So hopefully we'll be able to properly scrutinise that body once it's been set up. Okay, next meeting we're going to be looking at Mark Thomas's portfolio on parking policy control and enforcement. We're also planning to have a pre-decision scrutiny on the Cabinet report on the acquisition of the Princess Way property, which is going to be a one-stop shop and library. And if that happens, we may well postpone the Public Services Board report to the January meeting to make room for that to be looked at properly as part of that. Anybody got any comments on all that? No? Okay. So item 12 is the scrutiny letters for information and the date and time for upcoming scrutiny panel meetings. So I think that's everything. Thank you very much for attending the meeting, and we will see you next month at the scrutiny performance panel. Thank you very much indeed. Okay.
Thank you, Peter.
Yeah.
Thank you.